Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're making cultured butter and sourdough bread.
Is there anything better than butter?
Let's start with the butter. So for our cultured butter, we need 1 quart or 2 pints of heavy cream. I am using a recipe I found from Josh Weissman. I've linked his video below. Not only is he an amazing chef, he's really funny, so go check him out. So I'm just putting this in a nice clean glass vessel, and to this we're going to add 3.5 tablespoons of buttermilk. We're not even going to mix this, we're just going to let the buttermilk filter through and work its lovely magic on our heavy cream. Once our buttermilk is in, we're going to cover this with a little cheesecloth, wrap it up with a rubber band so nothing gets in, and we're going to let this sit on the counter and ferment for 24 hours. So now it's the next day, we're going to take off our cheesecloth and we're going to notice a thick skin on top. I would recommend using a wire mouth jar. You can see from the inset that this was very difficult to get out of my beautiful Weck bottle. I love this bottle, but maybe not the best vessel for this process. So we're going to process this in our food processor until the solids move away from the liquids, and it is going to look like a hot mess, but trust the process. This is a messy, messy endeavor, as you can tell. So I have a bowl, I have a strainer, and some cheesecloth over that strainer. I've triple layered this. We're going to dump the whole mixture into this. And using a stiff spatula, we're going to start pressing our butter solids against the side of our cheesecloth. We need to remove as much buttermilk as possible from this. This is fresh buttermilk now. That's where buttermilk comes from. We want to get as much of that out because it's going to shorten the shelf life of your butter. So once your spatula or wooden spoon has done all it can, go in with clean hands and just give this a really good squeeze. But don't throw away your buttermilk. This is great for brining chicken, to make fried chicken. Just be sure to label and date it so you know when you've made it. Now we need to remove all of our butter solids out into a clean bowl. Again, this is a messy, messy process, but it's also kind of fun and your hands get moisturized. So just move that over, and we're going to use some cold filtered water to start pressing out any of that excess buttermilk out of our butter solids. And this is going to take 3 to 4 rounds of dumping out that dirty water, or cloudy water I should say, refilling with fresh water and repeating the process. So going in again, pressing out more of that buttermilk. There's a lot more than you think trapped into your butter solids. Now our water is relatively clear. We're going to dump out that water and then just press any of that extra water that may still be trapped in our butter. At this point, if you want salted butter, add in 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. You could also leave this as a sweet cream, completely up to you. Just mix that around till everything is really well incorporated, because you don't want like a pocket of salt and a pocket of unsalted butter. So now we need wax paper. I'm using beeswax paper because it is reusable a few times and a little bit more sustainable. So I'm just using my spatula to transfer all of that butter onto my beeswax paper. And we're going to start shaping this into kind of a rectangular log. I found it easier to use 2 spatulas. That way I could scrape one down with the other and just press this out to roughly a rectangular shape. The more shaping will come when we go to fold in our butter into our paper. So now we're just going to wrap this up like a little burrito. The nice thing about this beeswax paper too is it sticks to itself, which helps in the closing process of this butter making endeavor. Just tucking in the sides. And we want to rest this in the fridge for at least 10 minutes, preferably overnight. I'm putting it in my glass butter holder just to keep out any of those extra fridge smells that might be happening in your refrigerator.
Why don't you have a piece of bread and maybe you'll calm down a little?
Now let's move on to the bread. As you know, with baking, measuring everything and weighing everything out is paramount to get a final perfect end product. So we need 7 grams of kosher salt or sea salt, 30 grams of all-purpose flour or rye flour, 370 grams of bread flour. I am being very precious with this. As you guys know, I am a cook. I'm not a baker. That is a completely different animal. Baking is a science. So to get the best end result, please weigh out your ingredients. You're going to be happier. You won't be as frustrated. And it may seem tedious, but there is a reason behind this. Now we need to measure out 46 grams of sourdough starter. If you follow me on Instagram stories, you've watched my little mother come to life. I haven't named her yet, so if you have any suggestions, please comment below. But this starter is beautiful. It smells yeasty and bready, and it grows twice its size every time I feed it. I'm now at the portion where I can put it in the fridge and feed it once a week. But don't throw away your sourdough discard when you're doing sourdough starter. There are tons of recipes out there for sourdough discard. Last but not least, we need to measure out 305 grams of room temperature filtered water. Now we're going to mix in our starter to our water and kind of make a sourdough slurry. Now we're ready to add in our bread flour, or all-purpose or our rye flour, whatever you're using, and our salt. And I like to rest the salt on top just so it doesn't mess up any of that great sourdough starter magic that's happening on the bottom. So now I'm just going in with the spatula and mixing this together. You want all of that flour to absorb all of that water. And once you notice all the liquid has been absorbed, go in with your hands because you want to make sure all of those salt granules have dissolved. And the only way to do that is to go in and feel it with your fingers. Make sure you don't feel anything grainy. And we just want to form a shaggy dough at this point. Now we're going to cover this up with a tea towel. And we need a damp tea towel, so I'm going to use my plant spritzer mister and just mist the top of this tea towel. And we're going to let that rest for 15 minutes before we open this back up, wet our hands, and start the gluten forming process. So I'm just taking a corner of that dough and pulling it towards the middle, then rotating the bowl and repeating this 8 times. And this is going to help those beautiful gluten strands to form. Then we're going to go in and lift from the middle and fold this over itself. You'll notice there's a cell pattern in this. I actually baked this bread twice. That first one was pretty cute, but I'm OCD and I thought I could do a little better. And yeah. So just flipping this around and folding it in on itself before we cover this up again. Set a timer for 1 hour. And we're going to repeat this process 3 more times with an hour resting process in between. While that is resting for the final hour, we're going to prepare our bowl for resting overnight in the fridge. So I do not have a proofing basket, so I've decided to use a colander. It's going to allow airflow to go through. I've just lined it with a cheesecloth. I'm sprinkling on rice powder because it's not going to absorb into our loaf. Now that our dough is ready to come out, we're going to plop this onto a well-floured surface. And we're going to start shaping. Take a bench scraper, go from the front, scoop around like a C, and just push that bread forward. You're going to start noticing a tension in this bread, and this is the forming process. You are going to have to flour your bench scraper and your hand because this is a sticky dough, but you don't want to overwork this because you don't want it to tear. Once you see a nice smooth top, then we're ready to move this over to our bowl, proofing basket, colander, whatever you're using. But we're going to flip the bread over so that the smooth surface is on the bottom and the seam is on top. We're going to cover this with our cheesecloth and then an additional tea towel and let this sit in the fridge overnight. Now it's the next day. I just pulled the dough out and bringing this to room temperature while our oven preheats to 450 degrees with a Dutch oven inside of it. So I have a piece of parchment here. I want this to be kind of shaped like a pumpkin, so I'm cutting out 4 equal lengths of butcher twine here. I've seen a lot of these beautiful pumpkin shaped loaves online, so I wanted to try to replicate that. And I figured with Halloween around the corner it was kind of appropriate. So now I'm just mapping out where I would like my butcher twine to go. And then we are going to flip out our dough and put the seam side down. I am leaving that rice flour on top because I'm going to use that to score my bread. So I've never scored bread before, but this is a bread lamb. I've had this for a little while. I've been dying to use it, but I've been very afraid. So we're gonna go map out where we're gonna cut first with just a bamboo pick. This just kind of gives me a guideline of where I would like my decoration and design to be. This is when you score bread, it allows those gases to release and it gives your bread more of a rise. So this is a flexible razor blade on top of a handle, and you're going to go in decisively and give this a score of at least a half of an inch. You're going to notice in the end product I didn't score deep enough in some areas, so it wasn't as defined. Gonna add a couple more decorative slashes. There's this one account on Instagram and YouTube called Bake This Bread. Definitely check out that account. Her bread making skills, oh, it's like artwork. It's absolutely beautiful. Now to start shaping our loaf, I'm just bringing the 2 sides of the twine to meet in the middle, but I'm leaving room so this bread can expand as it bakes. Just cutting off that excess string and then just repeating the process around until all of our strings are tied. Now my Dutch oven is coming out of the oven. It's very hot, so be careful. We're going to take all our bread and plop it down, parchment and all, and we're going to cover this with the lid and bake it for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, we're going to go and take off the lid and bake it for an additional 25 minutes. When you take off that lid, it's going to get that nice crust. Now after 45 minutes, we're going to take this out, put it on a cooling rack, and we're going to start removing our strings. They've done their job, but you'll notice like parts of my bread are much better scored than others. This is a learning process. I will be baking more bread, so I'll have more times to experiment with that lump, but the strings definitely worked on this. Your bread should sound hollow. So you have to let this rest for an hour up to 2 hours before you slice it open, but look at this beautiful bread. Now let's give this a taste. You have that super crusty outside and that soft, beautiful, airy inside. The bread is tart and delicious. This cultured butter is tangy with just the right amount of salt. This is a success, I think. I think the bread could have risen more, but I'm really, really happy with the way this turned out. But there it is, cultured butter and sourdough bread. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this channel, give it a like. If you loved it, subscribe and hit that notification bell because I put out new videos every Thursday. Thank you again, and until next time, happy cooking. I still have an hour left for this dough to rise. Definitely should have started this sooner.